Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for night number 2 of our Tanya Summit, which is really exciting. Baruch Hashem, we got incredible feedback last night. People who joined us live, people who are here on the webinar, people who watched the replay all around the world. So thank you. We're all getting really excited for Yitzhak Kislev. I want to share a short story that when they brought the Tanya to Reb Zusha Anapeli in order to write the Haskama, they gave him a pen and paper, and he said, "A pen and paper? Like one paper is not enough." After reading the Tanya, and so they brought him another paper, and he said, "That's not enough." And they brought him more and more paper, and he said, "This is not enough to describe the greatness of the Tanya." And so after they brought him all the paper in the house and he said it wasn't enough, they started collecting paper from neighbors until there was a massive pile of paper on his desk, and he said it's still not enough. And finally he came to the conclusion. He said, no matter how much paper I have, it's never going to be enough paper to write a proper haskama on the Tanya. So I think I'll just go back to that original paper, and he wrote a short haskama. So no matter how much we would describe the Tanya and how great it is, we would never be able to capture it. And that's part of what we're trying to do here. Just get a tiny little bit of how life-changing the Tanya is to get ourselves ready for Yitzhak Kislev and excited to start the cycle again. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker for tonight, Rabbi Bleich, who's a shliach, and his talk is titled, I came from Borough Park to Lubavitch because I was afraid. So Rabbi Bleich, take it away.
Hi, good evening. I hope that you can hear me. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, we hear you very well.
Okay. So just about what Mrs. Blau just said, when many years ago, I was doing a trip through Ukraine with some family members of mine who are not Lubavitchers. And one of the places that we went to was the Kiva of Rabbi Zusha Vanapali. And when we got to the cave of Reb Zusha, we went to the Mezritcha Magid. We went to the Reb Zusha too, but when we went to the Magid of Mezritch, we noticed that two other tzaddikim are buried together in the same aisle as the Magid of Mezritch, and one of them was Reb Zusha Vanapali, and the other one was Rabbi Yehud Leib HaKohen. And the discussion broke out amongst those that were there, asking, why is it that these two Talmidei HaMagid, the two disciples of the Magid, specifically these two, had the incredible schus to be buried alongside their teacher? And I pulled out a Tanya and I said, wow, look at this. If you look into the front of the Tanya, you see that there are two approbations written there, two haskamas. And the two haskamas were written by Rabbi Zusha Vanapali and Rabbi Yehud Leib HaKohen. And maybe, possibly, potentially, who knows, maybe that's why they had the incredible schus of being buried alongside the Maggid of Mezritch. In any case, as was just mentioned, the title of I came from Borough Park because I was afraid. Several people reached out to me and said, whoa, what's going on? What's that all about? So hopefully I'll be able to explain that tonight in my little talk. We're going to focus tonight on Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41, which is a very unique and important Perek in Tanya. The Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41, is split into two. The first part speaks of Yira, which is loosely translated as fear. The second part speaks of Ava, which is love. We're meant to serve Hashem this way, with the love leading us to the mitzvahs aseh, the positive mitzvahs, and the quote-unquote fear leading us away from averas or the negative commandments. I chose to focus on this parak tonight because Perek Mem Aleph, chapter 41, focuses on the most important foundation of Yiddishkeit, which is Yiras Hashem. Without Yiras Shamayim, there's nothing. Because as the Alter Rebbe points out, you need Yira not only for mitzvahs loisaseh, but one also needs Yira along with Ava for mitzvahs aseh. You also need Yira for Kabbalas Ilmach Shamayim. And as Pirkei Avos, chapter 3 tells us, Im ein Yira ein Chachma. So without yira, without proper yira, it's very difficult to get anywhere in Yiddishkeit. Now, this parak is especially meaningful to me as one who did not grow up with the philosophy of Hasidus Chabad. My wife and I, Baruch Hashem, so lucky to be shluchim of the Rebbe for 25 years, Bli Ayin Hara. But I grew up as a child in Borough Park, part of a loving, warm Hasidic family, but not of the Lubavitch persuasion. A big part of my childhood, like all other from children and teenagers, was focusing on how to serve Hashem best. This parak sums up a huge difference in the derech of Avodas Hashem, the way that we are meant to serve Hashem following Chassidus Chabad. You see, whereas most translate Yiras Hashem being fearful of Hashem, which sounds like you need to be afraid of Hashem, Chassidus Chabad explains it as being in awe of Hashem. What the Alter Rebbe is teaching in Tanya is to be aware of Hashem, always being aware, both by mitzvahs aseh and by mitzvahs lo aseh, and in everything that you do and everywhere that you go. It reminds me of the story of, I heard it as a child from Uncle Yossi. I'm assuming that others here also heard the story. We listened to it on records of there were two people traveling in a horse and wagon, and the driver at some point says to the passenger that he's very hungry and he would like to take an apple off of an apple tree that they're passing. And the story happened with one of the Gedolei Yisrael, and he's the one that tells the story, that the wagon driver turns to the passenger and he says to him, I'm going to grab that apple. I need you to be on the lookout. Make sure that nobody sees and nobody's watching. He runs over to the apple tree and he's about to grab an apple, and the passenger calls out, someone is watching, someone is watching. And he quickly runs back to the wagon. And he says, who's watching? I don't see anybody watching. He runs back to the tree and he says again, if you see someone watching, call out, someone is watching. He goes, and this happens 2 or 3 times. Eventually, he says, someone's watching, someone's watching. And he runs back to the wagon, jumps onto the horse, starts galloping away all along, looking over his shoulder, trying to see who's watching. And he turns to the passenger and he says, I don't understand why you keep on screaming that someone's watching, someone's watching. And the passenger says, you have to understand, Hashem is watching. Hashem is always watching us. Hashem is always looking at us, and Hashem is always watching over us. As it says in the very famous pasuk quoted in this very parak, which was also chosen by the Rabbi in Tafshan Lamed Vav in 1976, the Rabbi chose psukim, a Memar Chazal, that should be memorized by all. And one of those psukim that the Rebbe chose is one that the Alter Rebbe chose to put into Tanya, into this parak of Tanya, where the Alter Rebbe says, quotes the pasuk that says, "V'hine Hashem nitzav olav umleich al aretz kvoidei umabit olav uveichen kloyes v'leiv im avdei karoin." And behold, Hashem is standing over him, and the whole world is filled only with His glory. And still, even though Hashem's glory is everywhere and Hashem is watching everything, He chooses to search into the person, into their heart, to see. Hashem has the whole world to run, and yet He chooses to stand over each one of us, to look deep into our hearts, to see if we are serving Him appropriately. In other words, are you or am I aware that Hashem is watching and is interested to see how we're utilizing all of our God-given talents to serve Him as is meant to be? Hashem is not standing there like a policeman or a teacher observing a student even, rather as a Hashem that loves you and wants to get nachas from you. He's not sleeping. He never sleeps. Rather, He is always awake and looking out for you. And that's how important you are to Him. And as we see later in Parak Mem Aleph, later in the same chapter, the Alter Rebbe quotes the story from the Gemara and Brachas, where Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who is the most quoted Tana in the Mishnah and Gemara, is telling his students while he's on his deathbed, He says, it should be Hashem's will that you should all have fear of Hashem like the fear of humans. His students were in shock. They said, what? That's all we need? Fearing Hashem like one fears humans? To which his response was, Tedu, sollst du wissen, es ist nicht eine kleine Sache. It's not such a small thing. Every time someone sins, the first hope is, I hope that nobody sees me. So having the fear of a basar v'dam, having the fear of a human, makes complete sense, and that's why he said that over to his students. And this is the true meaning of yira, of awareness that Hashem is always here with us. Having that awareness in a conscious sense will keep us on the straight and narrow. This awareness, rather than fear, is now what leads us to loving Hashem. And this was always very fascinating to me. And one of the greatest things I loved as a young teenager coming to Lubavitch, I loved how much of what we do is based specifically on the love for Hashem. We do mitzvahs aseh because we love Hashem. We don't do averas, or at least we try not to do averas, because we love Hashem. It's not the fear factor, it's the love factor, which is born out of the awe and awareness factor. And Chassidus teaches us that since we love Hashem, and Hashem loves when Yidden do mitzvahs, we love doing mitzvahs since we love doing lovely things for someone we love. Whereas when I grew up, most of the reason to do a mitzvah was not to get punished. Most of the reason not to do an avera was not to get punished. Speaking of yira, one of the most popular brachas that the Rebbe would give and continues to give is the bracha of being a chayal. Everybody knows that the Rebbe would write back letters about being a chassid, the Yir Shamayim, and a lamdin. And this was a big bracha that the Rebbe would give all the time. What is this yira that the Rebbe is benching us and telling us to be a chassid, to be a shamayim? What is this? Is it fear that the Rebbe is telling us to have? Or is he making us aware that there is an awesomeness and an awareness that we need to have whatever we do, wherever we go, wherever we are, we need to have this awareness that Hashem is there, Hashem loves us, and this awesomeness is something that is the yira that the Alter Rebbe is speaking about in Tanya. While I'm at it, people often ask me, so I came to Lubavitch as a young child. Even before my bar mitzvah, I started coming to the Rebbe. I grew up in Borough Park, not so far from Crown Heights. And I had relatives who were Lubavitchers. Two very special uncles, Rabbi Shmuel Lu Zal Gesund Sein and Rabbi Moshe Feller Zal Gesund Sein, two of the early shluchim of the Rebbe. My mother has two siblings that became Lubavitchers, and I can't say that that's what drew me to Lubavitch, but certainly it helped. And I came to Crown Heights for different simchas, got to be by the Rebbe. And there's a number of different things that I can point to that say that drew me in to Lubavitch and to become a chassid of the Rebbe. But recently, I had the following story, which potentially is the reason that I became a Lubavitcher. And that is, about a year and a half, I know I told this story in a bunch of different places, so I'm assuming some people know it or heard of it, but I'll tell it tonight. About a year and a half ago, someone sent me a WhatsApp. In the WhatsApp, he wrote, "Do you recognize this person?" I clicked on the picture that was in the WhatsApp, and I saw that it was a picture of my father, Zal Gesund Sein, with the Rebbe. I did what anyone would do. I clicked back. It was on the GEM website. So I clicked at the picture before it and the picture after it. And lo and behold, I saw the picture after it was me. I was very excited about that. I'd been to the Rebbe several times as a child. I went with my grandfather and my aunt, Aleim Shalom. And I went with my father a few times, but this was a picture that I didn't recognize and I don't remember. I was very excited about it. I didn't have that very many pictures of me by the Rebbe. So I decided that I was going to reach out to Gem and see if I can buy the picture, which I did. While I was communicating with them, they said, there's also, you want to buy the picture? Do you also want to buy the video that goes with it? I said, there's a video. Wow, incredible. Of course I want to buy the video, which I did. I bought the video, which is only maybe 10 seconds long. I clicked on the video and this is what I saw. My father and I were walking by the Rebbe, and as my father walks by the Rebbe, my father says my name, Moshe Yehuda ben Sarah, Abracha af Yiras Shemayim. My father's asking the Rebbe for a bracha for Yiras Shemayim for me. The Rebbe responds with Besuras Toivas, which is, I think, what the Rebbe was saying to everyone that day. And as we walk by the Rebbe gives a little bit of a half of a turn towards us, and he says the following words, "Unachased by uns oichet," which loosely translated is, "and a chased by us also." So when people ask me, what is it that brought you to Lubavitch? What is it that drew you to Hasidus Chabad? My answer now is the Rebbe himself. The incredible story over here of how the Rebbe saw a young child before my bar mitzvah, clearly not a Lubavitcher, with my father, clearly not a Lubavitcher, and the Rebbe said, "And a chassid by uns oiched," and a chassid over here. I didn't even know about that. No one knew about that, as a matter of fact. It happened so quick, it only takes a few seconds. The Rebbe is half turning towards us. But yet the Rebbe saw all those years ago that this young boy is going to grow up, go to Lubavitch Yeshiva, which was a story in and of itself, how I ended up in Lubavitch Yeshiva, get married, go on shlichos, and Baruch Hashem, my children now are also shluchim. But this is something that the Rebbe saw all these years before it happened. That's the reason that I am a Lubavitcher. And interestingly enough, this came about through my father asking the Rebbe for a bracha for Yiras Shemayim. When we think about how the Rebbe, just a few words, and seemingly just as I was passing, maybe I heard it, I didn't hear it, I clearly didn't hear it, I was a child, but I don't even know if anybody heard it. And yet, I mean, the chassid part was still working on it, still trying to be a chassid, but we see how something like this, how the Rebbe just said it one time quietly, no one heard, and yet it comes true. How much more so all the things that the Rebbe says time and time again and again and again, we are 1,000,000,000% sure that everything that the Rebbe says will come to fruition, including the most important thing, the coming of Mashiach, which is going to happen pronto, ASAP. And so one of the things that I thank Hashem for every day is my introduction to Hasidus Chabad, my relationship to the Rebbe, not just as a shliach, but just as a regular Lubavitcher Chassid. And my introduction to the teachings of Hasidus Chabad, to the Sefer of Tanya, to all the other Hasidus, didn't happen until years later, till I ended up going, even though I was coming to the Farbrengens. How much did I understand? Not very much. Only once I went to Lubavitch Yeshiva and started learning was able to connect somewhat with Hasidus Chabad. And for that, I'm very grateful. I feel lucky and honored to be a part of this. And we know, it says in the Medrash that tzaddikim doimen leboiron. Tzaddikim resemble our Creator. Our Creator is Hashem. As someone, myself, who dreidzach in Borough Park by all the Tishin, all the Farbrengens of the local Rebbes, I've not met anyone who personifies tzaddikim doimen leboiron like the Rebbe. The awesomeness felt by the Rebbe is something I've never felt before and I've never felt since. There was a feeling going by dollars, even just being in the Rebbe's presence, a very, very awesome feeling, which is tzaddikim deiman lebayron. The reason we have a Rebbe is to remind us of Hashem. This concept of continued awe is not only because tomorrow I'm going to go get $1 or lekach or keshal bracha. Rather, it's an awareness that the Rebbe is always with his Hasidim and his Hasidim are always with him. And he's always looking out for you. And if you have trouble feeling this awareness, or you want to strengthen this awareness, then it's a good time to get in touch with the limud of the Rebbe's Torah, which is the best way to connect to the Rebbe. We're coming up now to Yutes Kislev. It's a Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus, an incredible way to get connected to Chassidus Chabad is through learning. That's what it's about. Chachma, Bina, and Das, connecting to the Rebbe, connecting to the Rebbe through the limud. As the Rebbe told my uncle, Rabbi Shmuel Lu, Zol Gesund Sein in Yechidus, when he was a bacher many years ago, when he asked the Rebbe about being makusher to him, the Rebbe said that the best way to do it is through learning. He said, learn was ich lern, learn what I learn. And of course, we know the Rebbe learned Nigla, the Rebbe learned Chassidus, but a very strong, a stronger way to connect to the Rebbe is to connect to the Rebbe through the learning of Chassidus, as the Rebbe has said many times. Now, each one of us gets to make only one choice in life. We only have one decision, one choice that we can make. The Gemara tells us, Hakol midei shamayim b'dei shamayim chutz mi'yirei shamayim. Everything is in the hands of Hashem. Hashem helps us make all of our other decisions, but you get to make one decision, and that decision is about your Yiras Shamayim. Are you going to have Yiras Shamayim? What level is that Yiras Shamayim going to be on? Will it be one of fear or will it be one of awe? I made my decision. And anyone that has not yet made that decision, if you haven't made it yet, or if you have made the decision, Yutes Kislev is an incredible time to strengthen that decision of how our Yiras Shamayim is going to be. Through taking upon ourselves, if we're already learning Tanya, whether it's through the Chitas, the daily learning of Tanya, or whether it's learning Tanya in addition to that, just learning the Sefer of Tanya, it's an incredible way to connect to Yutes Kislev, to connect to the Alter Rebbe, and through that also to connect to the Rebbe. And that is the bracha of Yutes Kislev, that we have the opportunity to be connected to Chassidus, to be connected to Chassidus Chabad. We can do that through the learning of Chassidus, and that strengthens our connection to the Rebbe. The Rebbe, as we all know, is looking out. Each and every one of us that are connected, that are Lubavitcher Chassidim, have incredible stories of how they are connected to the Rebbe. And you see that the more you learn Chassidus, the more strong your connection is to the Eibishter, to the Rebbe, and to Chassidus Chabad. So I'll finish off with just this one story. I know we have a hard end time over here. And I mentioned earlier about the video that I got from the Rebbe. Recently, maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, I found out that there was a program, AI program, where one can send a picture of themselves to this organization, company, or maybe it's GEM, maybe it's someone else, and they can help you find pictures of you by the Rebbe. And I decided to take advantage of that myself, and I sent in a picture of myself. And within a few hours, I got 17 pictures and 17 videos of myself with the Rebbe. Now, I was very excited about that, as you can only imagine. Each one of these videos is worth gold to me. And so many different small little stories that I had that I found out that I didn't even remember. But there was one story that I wanted to see, The night that I decided that I was going to be a Lubavitcher Chassid, no matter what happens, I'm not leaving this place. And I remembered exactly what the date was when that happened. And I sent it to the person that was sending me the pictures and the videos. I said, I want to see the video of this story. I had a story where I went by the Rebbe by Kershel Bracha, and it's like one of those cliche stories. The Rebbe looked into my eyes, and I felt that connection. And I remember where I was standing after I got Kershel Bracha from the Rebbe. I was standing directly across the Rebbe, and the person that I'd come with to the Rebbe said to me, it was after Kershel Bracha, and he said to me, Bleich, it's great to him again. Are you ready to go home? And I remember saying to myself, I go home. I am home. I never want to leave this place. And the next day I went back to yeshiva. I was learning in the Stollerner Yeshiva in Borough Park, and I told everyone, that's it. I am a Lubavitcher. I'm out of the closet. And I wanted to get the video of that. And I asked this person if he can help me find that video. He wasn't able to, because the video taken of the Rebbe was from the back of the people. We were able to see the Rebbe, but you couldn't see me. You couldn't see my face. So I decided he offered me, he said, I'll give you the video of the Kershel Bracha that night, even though it's something that has not yet been put out. And if you want, you could look through it and see if you find yourself. And I did find myself. And as I'm looking at myself walking by the Rebbe, I see the Rebbe looking into the eyes of all the people leading up to me. And then when it came my turn, the kais that the Rebbe was using, the cup that the Rebbe was using, got empty. And the Rebbe turned to the side to get the cup refilled. And once it was filled, he turned back to me without ever looking at me, looked at the cup and filled up the cup, and then looked at the next person. Seemingly, at least from the video, it seems like the Rebbe never looked into my eyes. And that whole big story that I decided the Rebbe looked into my eyes and I want to be a Lubavitcher and all this happened, looks like it may never have happened, or at least you can't see it in the video. And I was thinking to myself, what is the lesson? What do I take? What do I glean from this? That I all these years, maybe the biggest moments of my life, the moment that I decided that I was going to be a Lubavitcher, which sent me on a trajectory to go to Lubavitcher Yeshiva, to marry a Lubavitcher, to go on Shlichos, et cetera, all came about through this one story, which seemingly looks like it may not have happened. And it brought me to thinking how the Rebbe, on several occasions at Farbrengens, he would look at the people, and sadly, some of the people were, dozing off. And the Rebbe said, as a Frandiva zen and Dov, zen and Nishda. There are those that are here, but they're not here. And they're referencing those that really wanted to be there, but they were stuck behind the Iron Curtain in Russia. He said, as a Frandiva zen and Nishda, zen and Da. There are those that are here, but they're not really here. And there are those that are not here that are really here. And this was my lesson. The night that I went to the Rebbe, I can only imagine how desperate I was to connect to the Rebbe. And whether or not the story happened, it didn't happen. If the Rebbe did look into my eyes, it didn't look into my eyes. I thought he looked into my eyes. I wanted him to look into my eyes. I definitely was desperate to connect to the Rebbe. I was desperate for the Rebbe to look at me. And I had that moment. If it happened, it definitely happened. And that's a lesson that each and every one of us can have right now in the post-Gimel Tammuz life. Some people have seen the Rebbe, have not seen the Rebbe, want to connect to the Rebbe, have a hard time connecting to the Rebbe. I hear from a lot of young people, I never saw the Rebbe. But if we really, really want to connect to the Rebbe, if we're desperate to connect to the Rebbe, then we could connect to the Rebbe. The Rebbe is there for the taking. How do we make that happen? What is the best way to connect? Through Chachma. Chachma, Bina, and Das. That's what we're following. Chassidus Chabad. By connecting to Chassidus Chabad, and more specifically to the Rebbe's Torah, the Limud Torah that the Rebbe taught us and gave over to us, that is the best way to connect to the Rebbe in Tafshin Pei Hey. And leading up now to Yutes Kislev, we have this extra opportunity, not just as Lubavitcher Chassidim, but we have an extra boost that's given to us on Yutes Kislev, starting with the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe and all the Rabbeim, helping us out on this Yutes Kislev Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. to help us to connect to Hasidus Chabad, again, through learning, through specifically Tanya, as we're coming to Yutes Kislev. So my hope and prayer to each and every one of us and our acquaintances and our families and our Mukusharim and our Mukuravim is that they should have an opportunity to connect to Chassidus Chabad. We should have an opportunity to connect deeper to Chassidus Chabad. As a mashpia once told me that he said someone that didn't grow up in Chassidus Chabad knew, so he had the opportunity to become a Lubavitcher Chassid and to connect and to become a Makusher. But you should know that those that grew up as Lubavitcher Chassidim, it's never too late. They also have the opportunity to connect. So let's take this opportunity, Yutes Kislev, Tafshin Pei Hey, leading right up to it, to be Mukusharim, to connect to the Rebbe. And as I said earlier, like a small little line from the Rebbe, so to speak, and brought me to Lubavitch, how much more so something that the Rebbe sturmed about all the years to bring about the complete scholars of Melech HaMashiach. May it happen even before Yutes Kislev, Tafshin Pei Hey. Thank you very much for having me. I think it's 9:00.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Rabbi Bleich. Wow, that was so inspiring, the story of the Rebbe and how you became a chassid. And the truth is, really, all of us were hand chosen to be chassidim by the Rebbe. Just like every Tamim was hand chosen to be a Tamim, and every Beis Rivka alumna was hand chosen to be a Beis Rivka alumna. So thank you so much for that, Rabbi Bleich. That was so inspiring.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay.